Welcome back to the channel. Strap in, this one's going to be a doozy. We're going to cover a pretty highly debated topic. For the last 15 years, long-range target shooting has really blown up with the general public. It's no longer something that wealthy people, people in a niche category do. Everyone's doing it, and I don't blame them. I've dabbled in it, and it's a lot of fun. Unfortunately, long-range target shooting has also creeped into the hunting market. And in the last 10, maybe a little more years, the craze is to shoot high BC bullets at animals at distances 95% of you cannot make an ethical shot. So in today's video, I want to talk about how long-range hunting is unethical. With the craze of long-range hunting in the last 10 or so years, there have been a lot of YouTube channels or bullet companies that will film hunts and try to show off their long-range cartridge and long-range bullet. And a lot of times, they don't show the misses or the extremely poor shots that were taken on the animals. I'm not really the audience that watches long-range hunting, but this past year I've seen at least a couple where the YouTuber was dumb enough to show all of the misses or the really poor shots. For example, one was taken, I think, a little past 1,000 yards. The hunter took an okay shot and the elk just wouldn't go down. The next time they took it, they hit it in the butt, still wouldn't go down. Then they decided to go across the canyon to get it closer to try to finish it off. And the hunters missed. Then they went back to where they were so they could get a better shot. And they finally killed it with like the fourth or fifth shot. I've got to imagine that elk was wounded for probably at least 2 hours before it died, which is really sad. So all these YouTube channels, they don't really show realistically what happens. Another experience I had was my elk hunt this past fall. All right, update. Ran into at least 2 other hunting parties. One of them above me has been taking shots. Wouldn't be surprised if they take another one soon. We've been hearing elk in this little ravine. Let me try to explain the picture here. The hunters that were above me were probably about 1,000 yards above me on this hill that you see in this picture, except for they were shooting on the other side of this hill, and the elk were in this canyon that probably had about the same distance as you see from the sagebrush to the trees, and at minimum it would have been an 800-yard shot. Most likely it's probably a 1,000-yard shot. They were just planking away at elk. They took 6 shots, and right after they were shooting, I got my elk, and I was kind of up there for a while quartering my elk. I was the only one that day that took down an elk, so they completely missed or wounded an elk, and the elk left to another canyon, unfortunately. I believe there are 3 really good reasons for 95% of the population not to long distance hunt. I will talk about the 5% that can do it, and well, we'll cover that later. But let's talk about the first reason why I think it's extremely dumb and unethical to long-range hunt. That is, of course, bullet limitations. To humanely kill a big game animal like an elk, you really want your bullet to expand. Conventional bullets like the ELD-X, which is a cup and core bullet, its range of expansion is, 1,800 feet per second is its limit. There are 2 other types of bullets. One of them is this Barnes. It is a monolithic bullet, which means it's just all made of copper. It is advertised as a long-range bullet. It does have a little bit higher BC than the TTSX bullet. But the issue with monolithic bullets is they need velocity to expand. Again, this bullet is extremely limited on the range and how fast it can go. I would not feel comfortable taking an animal where the bullet's going below 2,000 feet per second with this bullet. The other type of bullet is a bonded bullet. This one is the Nosler Long Range AccuBond. So it's got all the great characteristics of a bonded bullet with high BC. Now, the bonded bullet, in theory, is kind of your best of both worlds. You get high BC, decent penetration, but it won't blow apart like a cup and core bullet because it's bonded. The only issue with the Nosler Long Range AccuBond, it's a really finicky bullet. Some of my rifles love it. Some of my other rifles absolutely hate it. So it's not as popular because it's expensive and it can be pretty hard to load for. Most bullet companies will advertise that their bullets will expand all the way down to 1800 feet per second. It's really kind of the industry standard. The only problem is a lot of these companies exaggerate their numbers. And what you realistically see, well, let me show you. Most of you are familiar with Ultimate Reloader. 2 years ago, he did a velocity test with the Hornady ELD-X and the Hornady ELD-M. Now, he did not shoot these in water jugs. He shot these in ballistic gel. And this is the results of 1800 feet per second expansion. Both the ELD-X and the ELD-M expanded roughly about the same. And when I say expanded, well, that's a huge exaggeration because they basically didn't expand. I would call that a failure. I think you're going to need 2,000 feet per second to see bullets expand. Now let's get to the point here. The ELD-X and probably a lot of other bullets will not expand at 1,800 feet per second. And in front of me is today's most popular hunting cartridge. It's the 6.5 Creedmoor. And for some reason, it has been heralded as this amazing long-distance hunting cartridge, when it is not at all. Point number 2, most people are extremely undergunned to be doing long-range hunting. So let's look at the data at sea level and then also at 9,000 feet. I know a lot of you aren't going to be elk hunting on the beach. So at sea level, so maybe you are hunting in Alaska and you're doing some deer hunting, a 143 grain ELD-X with the factory ammo, a muzzle velocity 2700, which is pretty generous. Most rifles won't get 2700, but we'll go with it. 2300 foot-pounds of energy, 400 yards. Your bullet's still going fast enough to expand, but at 400, you're already below 1500 foot-pounds. Now, for you long-range guys, I know foot-pounds hardly means anything, but I still think there's some merit to it. Usually you want to be over 1500 foot-pounds, at least for elk. 500 yards, your bullet's still going barely fast enough to expand, and you're at 1300 foot-pounds. Now, some have taken elk way farther, or some call this an 800-yard long-range cartridge. Yeah, that's bullcrap. The bullet's going 1681. It will not expand. It's just going to pencil through an animal, and you're at 898 foot-pounds. Let's look at the data up at high elevation. It is more favorable for the 6.5 Creedmoor with that exact same factory ammo. You're at 400 yards, your bullet's still going plenty fast enough, and you have 1,687 foot-pounds. Where exactly does your bullet not expand? Well, I would say anything past 700 yards at 9,000 feet. The problem is you're a bit below 1,500 foot-pounds. And personally, yeah, I consider both of these pretty important. Whether you are shooting a 6.5 Needmore or the big 300 PRC, there's always one huge limitation. It's us, the shooter. The vast majority of us have no business taking an animal at 800 yards. I try to go target shoot once a month, and some days I'm really on. The gun's really on, the ammo's doing great. Some days, it's not on at all. And be honest with yourself. You know exactly what I'm talking about if you've shot long distance at all. If long distance shooting was as easy as a lot of people make it out to be for hunting, well, there would be a lot better results in F class. You know, everyone would be at worst shooting 2.5-inch groups at 1,000, not at best 10-inch groups. Wind will do crazy things, especially at longer distance. It is so hard to read it. Not to mention buck fever. The excitement of being able to take an animal, it's real for me at least. Now let's talk about the small minority that are extremely skilled that can do the long distance shooting. I have a couple questions for you. Have you always been perfect at shooting? Never made a mistake? Never made the wrong wind call? Never had a bad batch of ammo? And two, most importantly, give me one good reason why you should take an animal at 800,000 yards or more. Just give me one good reason. I've yet to have someone tell me a good reason why doing long range hunting is needed.